Love hurts. But so does doing the dishes at your ex-husband's place. Professor Doumeki is the university's resident ice king, brilliant, distant, and allergic to small talk. April Fools is a world famous idol with mismatched eyes, overwhelming sex appeal, and millions of fans. Nobody would ever guess the two have something in common, except a messy little detail. They used to be married. 2 years post divorce, fate shoves them back together, and suddenly it's awkward breakfasts, bickering over dishes, and kisses that start out soft but end with someone getting shoved against a wall. Between petty arguments, old habits, and a whole lot of unresolved heat, the question isn't if they'll fall back into each other's arms, it's whether they'll survive the reunion without killing each other first. If you're into messy exes, awkward breakfasts, and kisses that turn into full on battles, you're gonna love this series. So don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next chapter of this wild BL ride. The campus cafe buzzed with chatter, the hum of voices blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. At a corner table near the window, four girls leaned in close, their drinks forgotten as the conversation turned lively. Professor Doumeki is so mysterious, one of them sighed, stirring her latte absent-mindedly. He's so strict in class, but it just makes him cooler, don't you think? Another girl giggled. He's the type who doesn't even hang out with other teachers. Didn't you notice? Even when they invite him to dinners, he politely declines. He's like untouchable, the third chimed in, her voice almost dreamy. Japanese, teaches linguistics, never wastes words. Honestly, he's like something out of a novel. Their admiration grew as they compared notes, each girl painting him as a figure, shrouded in distance, but magnetic nonetheless. Suddenly, a ringtone shattered the air, upbeat, powerful, and unmistakable. The screen lit up, blaring a familiar idol anthem. The girl scrambled to silence her phone, cheeks turning pink. Sorry, it's just my April Fool's ringtone. That name made the table explode with squeals. April Fools? Don't even get me started. I went to his concert last week. You have no idea. The way he moves, the way he looks at the crowd. Ugh, my heart nearly exploded. She whipped out her phone and played a clip. On the small screen, the idol moved like liquid fire, each step sharp, each gesture intoxicating. His mismatched eyes, one deep amber, the other an icy gray, glittered under the stage lights, sending the girls into a frenzy. He's too good to be real, one whispered, clutching her cheeks as if to contain her emotions. But just a few steps away, shielded by the leafy cover of a tall potted plant, sat a man in casual clothes. A baseball cap shadowed his face as he quietly sipped his coffee. His lips twitched faintly at their words because the idol they adored, the one who set stages ablaze and captured millions of hearts, was right there, alone, hidden in plain sight. April Fools himself. The group of girls were still squealing over the concert clip when one of them said, "You know, if April Fools ever walked into this cafe right now, I think I'd just die on the spot." The others laughed, nodding in exaggerated agreement. From behind the leafy plant, the man in the cap took a slow sip of coffee, his shoulders stiffening slightly. He glanced at the reflection in the window, just enough to catch their starry-eyed faces. A small sigh escaped him, but his expression betrayed nothing. At that moment, the cafe door opened with a soft chime. A tall man in a crisp dark coat stepped inside, drawing subtle attention even without trying. His black hair was neat, his glasses framed sharp features, and his stride carried the calm assurance of someone who belonged in academia. Professor Doumeki, the cafe seemed to hush as he moved to the counter, ordering with curt efficiency. He didn't linger. Even here, outside the lecture halls, his air of detachment kept others from approaching. The girls whispered excitedly, elbowing each other. "Oh my god, it's him!" The professor. Meanwhile, in the obscured corner, the man under the cap tilted his head ever so slightly, eyes following the professor. For a fleeting second, something softened in his guarded expression. A faint smile. Professor Doumeki collected his drink and, without sparing a glance around, walked briskly toward the exit. As he passed the corner table, the man in the cap lifted his gaze just enough. Amber eye, gray eye. For an instant, the heterochromic glimmer caught the professor's attention. Doumeki's step faltered, so subtly no one else noticed. Their eyes met, a silent recognition hanging in the air like a spark too dangerous to touch, and then, just as quickly, it was gone. The professor left. The idol lowered his cap again, but neither pretended the moment hadn't happened. The girls at the cafe burst into giggles again, replaying the concert clip for the third time, their excitement blotting out everything else. None of them noticed when the man in the corner stood, slipping his hand into his pockets, cap tilted low. His coffee sat half finished, forgotten. Outside, the early evening air carried the faint chill of autumn. The street was lined with lampposts just flickering to life, their glow painting soft circles along the pavement. Professor Doumeki walked briskly, one hand in his coat pocket, the other holding a steaming cup. His long stride suggested a man with no intention of lingering. A few paces behind him, April Fools followed, not hurriedly, not suspiciously. His gait was easy, casual, just another passerby in the city, but his gaze was fixed, never letting the distance between them grow too wide. Domeki paused briefly at a crosswalk, waiting for the light. The glow of the street lamps touched his profile, sharp, unreadable, as if even the night dared not pry too closely. April Fool's lips curved faintly beneath the shadow of his cap. The light changed. They crossed. For several blocks, this silent pursuit continued, neither man acknowledging the other, yet both aware. Each time Doumeki slowed, April Fools adjusted. Each turn, each pause, mirrored like a quiet dance. The city glowed in fragments, lamplight pooling on the sidewalk, car headlights flashing past. Doumeki's figure was a silhouette against the soft haze, tall and composed. April Fools kept a steady distance, casual to anyone watching, but his mismatched eyes never left the professor's back. At the crosswalk, Doumeki stopped. The red signal washed over him, his glasses catching a faint glint. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, too still. The idol slowed his pace, careful, steps quiet against the pavement. Then, without warning, Doumeki turned. His gaze met April Fool's, sharp as a blade despite the faint glow of the streetlights. There was no surprise in his expression, no startle at being followed, only a calm acknowledgement, as though he had been expecting this all along. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The idol's lips curved faintly, the shadow of his cap unable to hide the gleam of his heterochromatic eyes. Domeki's own voice, when it came, was low, measured. "You shouldn't be here." April Fools tilted his head slightly, a playful spark dancing in his mismatched gaze. "And yet, here I am." The crosswalk signal turned green. Cars hummed by, but neither man moved. The world pressed forward while the space between them tightened like a wire drawn taut. The city's hum faded, the air between them thick with silence. Doumeki's dark eyes didn't waver, fixed on the man before him. Finally, his voice cut through, low, clipped, edged with a quiet sharpness. "What do you want, you?" The use of his name, his real name, not the stage one, hung heavy. "April Fools," you let out a small laugh. It wasn't mocking, but soft, touched with something almost fragile. He tugged his cap back just enough to show his mismatched eyes fully, their gleam striking even under the muted streetlights. "It's been 2 years since the divorce," Domeki continued, his tone as flat as if he were stating a fact in class. Yet his grip on the coffee cup tightened imperceptibly. "You should have no reason to follow me." Yu's smile flickered, then steadied. "No reason? Maybe. But I still missed you." His words were disarmingly simple, unadorned, yet they carried the weight of all the things unsaid. Doumeki's expression did not change, though his silence stretched long enough to feel like a refusal. Yu tilted his head, forcing lightness into his voice. "I thought I'd give it a shot, since I'm in town. No cameras, no crowds, just this." He gestured loosely to the quiet street, the glow of the lampposts, the narrow space between them. "Have a drink with me, Doumeki." "One drink." The professor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The logical thing would be to walk away, to keep the wall firm between them. And yet his feet did not move. The invitation lingered in the night air, heavier than the autumn chill. The bar was dim, tucked away in a side street, the kind of place where no one would expect to see a professor or a world famous idol. The hum of jazz blurred into the clinking of glasses as Yu leaned back in his seat, nursing his whiskey. Doumeki sat across from him, posture impossibly straight even in the low light, his untouched glass resting between long fingers. So, Yu began, his voice deceptively casual. 2 years, huh? You'd think I'd be over you by now. Doumeki's gaze flicked up, sharp and unreadable. You should be. Yu gave a half smile, swirling the ice in his glass. Cold as ever. Makes me wonder why I even. He stopped himself. For once, the performer in him faltered. Forget it. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the bar's soft background noise. Yu shifted, leaning forward slightly, his tone softer. Do you ever think about it? About us? Doumeki took a measured sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving Yu's. When he set the glass down, he said evenly, I don't see the point of revisiting the past. The words stung, sharp and final. Yu laughed lightly, though it sounded hollow in his own ears. Right. Of course. No point. When they stepped out into the night air again, Yu knew he was losing him. He turned, forced a smile, and before he could think better of it, leaned in. The kiss was feather-light, just a brush of lips, a whisper of what once was, and then he stepped back, his throat tight. Maybe this was closure, maybe this was the end. He turned, almost resigned to leaving for good, but Doumeki's hand shot out, fingers gripping Yu's jaw, tilting his face back with a force that left no room for retreat. His mouth crushed against Yu's in a searing kiss, hard and desperate, as if punishing him for daring to leave. Yu gasped into it, the world tilting as the kiss devoured him. By the time he registered what was happening, Doumeki had him pressed against the cool brick wall, their mouths clashing, teeth, breath, heat, everything reckless and uncontrollable. The next thing you knew, they were stumbling into Doumeki's apartment, clothes tugged impatiently, kisses never breaking, hands grasping, pulling, demanding. Doumeki pushed him back onto the bed, lips bruising against his, kisses rough and consuming. When their mouths finally tore apart, Doumeki's voice was low, hoarse, treaded with anger. Is this what you want? Did you come back for one last fuck? Yu's breath shuddered, his eyes searching Doumeki's face. He wanted to say no, I came for more, but all he managed was a whisper. If this is all you'll give me, I'll take it. Even if it's just for tonight, Doumeki's jaw clenched, his frustration clear, his hands gripping Yu's shoulders with a force that bordered on bruising. And then his mouth was on Yu's again, fierce and unforgiving, every kiss rough, angry, and hurried, as though trying to erase the 2 years of distance in one night. The world blurred in heat and shadows, the night belonged to them, fade to black. Yu woke up sore in places he hadn't been sore in for a very long time. His body ached, his skin was marked, and he briefly considered that maybe Doumeki had secretly taken up professional wrestling during their 2-year break. Groaning, he sat up and blinked around the room. Modest, clean, spacious enough, but completely personality-free. Yep, definitely Doumeki's cave. He shuffled toward the bathroom, thinking maybe hot water would help him feel like less of a corpse. Then he spotted it, on the sink, standing proud and alone, one toothbrush. Just one. Yu stared at it, squinting. Really? After 2 years, still the lone wolf act, he muttered. It was ridiculous that a toothbrush could make his chest ache more than last night's bruises. Of course there was only one. He didn't live here anymore. The shower helped, though standing under the spray too long just felt wrong. This isn't my home. I'm just a trespasser with sore thighs. When he returned to the bedroom, he stopped dead. On the bed, neatly folded, a plain t-shirt and a pair of underwear. His jeans from last night were draped nearby. Yu blinked. Seriously? Did he prepare this? What the hell, Doumeki? Am I a sleepover guest now? Resigned, he dressed, tugging on his jeans and muttering under his breath. Guess he doesn't stock pants in my size. Steeling himself for the inevitable walk of shame, Yu opened the door. The smell hit him first, savory, rich, unmistakably breakfast. His stomach growled so loudly it was practically a betrayal. And there he was, Professor Doumeki, in all his stoic glory, standing at the stove and cooking like it was the most natural thing in the world. You nearly tripped over his own feet. Wait, 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 you cook now? His brain short circuited. The man who had once declared, "Why cook when you're already good at it?" was now flipping eggs like a domestic husband. You rubbed his face. Unbelievable. 2 years apart, and suddenly he's Gordon Ramsay. Figures. He considered retreating into the bedroom and escaping through the window, but then remembered the elevator ride last night. 10th floor. Minimum. He pictured the song Dumb Ways to Die playing at his funeral, died dramatically while avoiding awkward ex-husband breakfasts. Yeah, no thanks. Before he could make a run for it, Domeki turned and gestured, wordless, expectant, for him to sit at the table. You sighed. At least the man still had manners. He sat down and tried to look less like a starving stray. They ate in silence. You, of course, was the only one squirming, cheeks hot. Why am I always the one embarrassed? He looks like he's just grading papers in his head. Bitterly chewing his toast, you secretly hoped Domeki would excuse himself for the bathroom. He always went right after meals. It was practically a law of nature. Minutes passed. Nothing. You narrowed his eyes. He's holding it in, on purpose, just to mess with me. Finally, you slammed down his chopsticks. I'd better go now. Domeki didn't miss a beat. Aren't you going to wash the dishes before leaving? I cooked. You froze, jaw slack. Oh, you absolute. When they were married, their system had always been simple. You cooked, Doumeki washed, fair, balanced, normal. And now he was supposed to clean like some unpaid intern? He wanted to yell, "We're divorced, you robot! I'm a guest! Guests don't wash dishes!" But instead, he grit his teeth, stacked the plates, and muttered under his breath, "This man. This absolute menace of a man." And just like that, old habits dragged him right back in. The sink was running, Yu's hands buried in suds as he scrubbed the plates like they'd personally wronged him. Behind him, Domeki leaned against the counter, arms crossed, sipping his coffee as if supervising a prisoner on kitchen duty. Yu muttered, "Unbelievable. 2 years apart, and I'm still your dishwashing slave. Some things never change," Domeki, without looking up from his mug, replied flatly, "You volunteered." Yu nearly dropped the plate. He spun, dripping water everywhere. "Excuse me? You ordered me to do it." Domeki raised an eyebrow, the very picture of unbothered. "You're the one holding the sponge." You smacked the wet dish towel against the counter with enough force to make it slap. "I swear to God, you were born to test my patience. Do you treat all your one-night stands like this? Here's a shirt. Here's some breakfast. Now scrub the dishes before you go?" "Don't have one-night stands," Domeki said simply. The words landed heavier than you expected. For a second, he just stared, blinking, his mouth halfway open. Well, he turned back to the sink, scrubbing furiously. Congratulations on your spotless moral record, Professor. I'm honored to be the exception." The silence that followed was suffocating and entirely Dumeki's fault. You filled it with his own voice, as usual. "You know, when we were married, this was supposed to be your job. I cooked, you washed. That was the deal. Now here I am, divorced and still stuck cleaning your dishes. Honestly, I deserve compensation. You should be paying me alimony for this." From behind him, Domeki's voice came calm, maddeningly even. "You burned the rice half the time. I considered this hazard pay." You spun around again, soap suds dripping off his hands, eyes wide with outrage. You smug, ungrateful." Domeki looked at him, completely unbothered, sipping his coffee like this was the morning news. You groaned, turning back to the sink with a dramatic flourish. "Unbelievable. I'm arguing with you while elbow deep in bubbles. This is literally married couple hell, and we're divorced. Do you hear me? Divorced." That's it?" Domeki shrugged. "You're loud in the morning." You slammed the last dish into the rack, water splashing everywhere. "That's it. I'm never sleeping with you again." Domeki's mouth quirked, just barely. "You said that 2 years ago." The towel slipped from Yu's fingers, his face heated instantly, his jaw tightening. You but his throat closed around the words because somehow Doumeki had turned the battlefield into his victory again. Yu slammed the last plate into the rack, soap still clinging to his fingers. He turned, glaring at Doumeki, who hadn't moved from his spot at the counter. Arms crossed, coffee mug in hand, that infuriating "I win" without trying expression plastered across his face. "You're impossible," Yu snapped. Don't you dare me again." Yu's voice cracked in frustration. "I am not one of your students. You can't just nod and sip coffee like you're above all this." Doumeki raised an eyebrow, taking another sip, then stopped acting like one. Yu sputtered, pointing the wet sponge at him like a weapon. "That's it. I'm leaving. I cannot be in the same square footage as you without losing brain cells." He ripped the apron, which he didn't remember putting on, off his waist, tossed it dramatically onto the counter, and stomped toward the door. His sneakers squeaked against the polished floor with each furious step. Behind him, Doumeki's voice came low, calm, utterly unfazed. "Don't slip." "Arja!" Yu yanked open the door and stormed into the hall, slamming it shut with enough force to make the frame rattle. Victory. Sweet, petty victory. Ik, until about 30 seconds later, Yu stood frozen in the hallway, staring at identical beige walls and a row of identical beige doors. He blinked once, twice. Oh no, he spun in a circle. Where was the elevator? Which direction had they even come from last night? He had been far too busy being shoved against walls and kissed senseless to take note of things like floor numbers and layouts. Panic set in as he patted his pockets. Empty. He checked again, more desperately this time. Still empty. His phone, his precious, all-knowing phone. It was sitting on the nightstand inside Doumeki's apartment. Yu dragged his hands down his face. Unbelievable. The dramatic storm out ruined by bad navigation and phone abandonment. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaked open. Yu imagined it was Doumeki, watching with that smug, "I knew you'd be back" look. Yu groaned. "This is my life now. Divorce, humiliation, and early onset dementia." He turned back toward Doumeki's door, face burning, muttering to himself, "If he so much as smirks when I go back in, I swear I'll jump out the damn window." Yu stood in the hallway for a solid 30 seconds, muttering every curse word he knew under his breath. Each second he spent out here felt like his pride was deflating 1 psi at a time. Finally, he groaned and stomped back toward the door. "Okay, you'll just knock, grab your phone, and leave. Fast. Like ripping off a bandage." He raised his fist, hesitated, then knocked. 3 short taps. Nothing. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. He was about to pound with both fists when the door swung open, and there stood Doumeki, leaning against the frame, coffee mug still in hand like he'd been standing there for hours just waiting for this moment. "Forgot something?" Doumeki asked, voice calm, face unreadable except for the tiniest quirk at the corner of his mouth. Yu's soul left his body. "Shh. Phone. I left my phone." "Oh, did you?" Doumeki stepped aside, letting him in with a slow, deliberate gesture. "It's on the nightstand." Yu stomped past him, trying to radiate dignity despite looking like a wet cat. "Don't say it," he muttered. "I haven't said anything." "You're thinking it. I can feel you thinking it." Doumeki's voice was deadpan. "Thinking what?" "That you knew I'd come back. That you knew I'd get lost. That you're enjoying this like some sort of sick soap opera. Interesting theory." Doumeki sipped his coffee. Yu grabbed his phone from the nightstand, jamming it into his pocket like he was smuggling contraband. "All right, got it. I'm leaving. For real this time. Elevators to the left." Yu froze mid-step. "I moved here last year," Doumeki added blandly. "New building. Different layout. You wouldn't know the way." Yu turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "You're enjoying this." Doumeki blinked once, expression neutral. "Am I?" "Yes." Yu threw his free hand up. "You are. You're sitting there with your coffee and your smug face and your domestic eggs, and I'm the idiot who looks like a lost delivery guy. I can't believe I ever—" He cut himself off before the words "loved you" could slip out. Doumeki raised an eyebrow. "Can't believe you ever what?" Nothing. Forget it." Yu stomped toward the door again. "Goodbye. For real. Forever. End of series. Roll credits." He yanked it open, stepped into the hall, and promptly realized he still wasn't sure which button called the elevator. From behind him, Doumeki's voice floated out, perfectly calm. It's the button labeled elevator. Yu's eye twitched. I hate you. Stop doing that. And with that, Yu stormed down the hall for the second time, muttering under his breath about life, fate, and the cosmic injustice of ex-husbands with perfect poker faces. Yu stormed out of Daumeki's apartment for the second time that morning, practically vibrating with indignation. He punched the elevator button like it owed him money, muttering under his breath the entire way down. Unbelievable. He thinks he's so calm, so collected. Forgot something? Ugh, I'll show him forgetting something. I'll forget him if it's the last thing I do. By the time he reached the parking garage, the fire in his chest had burned itself hollow. His sneakers echoed against the concrete as he trudged toward his car, shoulders sagging. He slipped inside, shut the door, and for a moment just sat there in the silence. No stage lights, no cheering crowds, no Domeki's infuriatingly calm voice. Just the low hum of his own breath and the tight ache in his chest. His hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel. He bit his lip hard, trying to will the sting in his eyes away. But the harder he fought it, the faster the tears came. Damn it, he whispered, voice cracking. The tears fell hot and fast, blurring his vision. He pressed his forehead against the wheel, shoulders shaking as years of anger and longing spilled out all at once. On stage, he was April Fool's, dazzling and untouchable. Here, in this car, he was just you, messy, heartbroken, and still hopelessly in love with a man who barely looked ruffled after kissing him breathless. I hate you, Yu whispered into the silence, though his chest ached with the truth. I miss you. I never stopped. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A notification, maybe from his manager, maybe from the world that still wanted him smiling and flawless. Yu ignored it, burying his face in his sleeve and letting himself cry until the sobs softened into silence. When he finally looked up, his reflection in the rearview mirror was red-eyed, messy, and unmistakably human. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand, forcing a shaky laugh. Great. Perfect. Superstar idol, crying in a parking garage, really selling the brand here. You. He started the engine, but his hands lingered on the wheel, knuckles pale. Deep down, he knew the truth he didn't want to admit. Running wasn't working. Not from Doumeki, not from what they had, not from what he still wanted.